Good evening to Dr. Young and my fellow classmates. Today, my group, consisting of myself, Suzanne, Hanis Raihana, Nur Raiha, and Nur Shahira, will be presenting our infographic presentation where our research is on error analysis on future tense among upper primary school students in Malaysia. So the problem statement for our study is that ESL learners are not aware of the errors being made when it comes to writing using simple future tense. So according to Fitria, she claims that because these ESL learners are not aware of the errors being made, they are unable to fix the mistakes and they are not able to fully grasp the understanding of the grammatical rules there is to simple future tense. So in order to overcome this problem, teachers or educators need to be provided with the examples of errors that are commonly made by ESL learners. Alright, so I'm going to give a little bit of background on our research. So the English language in Malaysia is a compulsory subject in schools, no matter if you're in a government school or in a public school. Sorry, or in a private school, right? So in bilingual children, it has been shown that second language acquisition start when they're young. So right when they join kindergarten, they are already being taught these languages, Bahasa Malaysia and English. So they are being exposed and they are being taught these languages for a long period of time. Now, although they are being exposed to this language, according to Munasami, he states that despite years of learning and being exposed to the language, children still do not perform well. Now, the result of this is that, according to New Straits Times, there has been a significant drop in English writing performance among UPSR students. Now, this is in the year 2019, before the pandemic hit, where UPSR examination was still going on. Now, this is where our research focuses on error analysis on future tense in order to close the gap of grammar. So we are focusing on future tense among upper primary school students since it is an aspect of grammar that is most challenging for students. Now, there is a limitation to our study where our study cannot fully cover the whole of Malaysia. So we are focusing on only one state, which is Pahang, where we are only going to focus on children from those schools. Alright, so that is a limitation in our study. So the two research questions that we have included in our study is that the first one is, what are the types of future tense mostly made by upper primary students in writing? And the second one is that what are the factors that contribute to the future tense errors made by upper primary students in writing? So without further ado, I'll pass it to Hanis to present on the methodology and procedure of our research.
Hi, my name is Hanis Rahana, and I'll be presenting on the methodology and the procedures. Our research design will be based on mixed methods. In order to answer research questions 1 and 2, we will be using quantitative and qualitative design respectively. So our sample will consist of about 120 students, 60 from each of the two schools. The age range is about 10 years old to 12 years old. So the plan is to have 20 10-year-olds, 20 11-year-olds, and also 20 12-year-olds from each school. So the demographic of these schools will be taken into account as well, as SK Bukit Rangin is in a rural area while SK Panglima Perang is within urban population. So the instrument we will be using are written tests to identify the errors in future tenses and non-test instrument, which is interview, for the teachers to look into the factors of these errors. So as for the procedures, we will first ask the participants to sign a consent form. Next, the written test will consist of a picture and a few words will be given to facilitate the students in their writing. So they will be required to write a paragraph for about 80 to 100 words. So the topic will focus on planning a picnic trip for the family next Saturday. Next, based on the answer sheets, we will identify the errors based on Albom's framework. So the frequencies of these errors will then be analyzed. We will also conduct a pilot test using a sample interview questions in order to see whether the sample will be able to gather all of the information necessary for the study. So 4 English teachers will be interviewed for the pilot test. Next, using the improved set of questions, 10 English teachers, 5 from each school, will be interviewed for about 10 to 15 minutes per person. Going into theoretical framework, I will pass on to Raiha.
Hi, I am Noreha Razli, and I will continue to talk about theoretical frameworks that will be used in this study. To answer the first research question, there are two frameworks that we will use. The first one is Corder in 1974. There are 5 stages in conducting error analysis. So the first one is collecting samples of learners' language so that clear statements can be made regarding what kinds of errors the learners produce and under what conditions. The second one is identifying errors. There are certain ways to distinguish between an error or a mistake. An error is associated with checking the consistency of the L2 learner's performance. If learners sometimes use a correct form of a certain structure, and later on uses the wrong one, then it is a mistake and can be self-corrected. However, if he or she always uses it wrongly, then it is an error. A mistake is associated with asking an L2 learner to correct his or her deviant utterance. In case that he or she is unable to, the deviations are errors, and where he or she is successful, they are definitely mistakes. The third stage is describing errors. Describing errors is a prerequisite for a good explanation of errors. So description of errors helps in serving 3 major purposes. First is to instinctively expound all that is unstated and to substantiate an individual's instinct. Secondly is to can be as a prerequisite for counting learners' errors. A third one is to create categories and subcategories for errors, which can help in the process of developing a comprehensive taxonomy of L2 errors. Errors are classified into 4 categories: omission, selection, addition, or misordering of some elements. The fourth one is explaining errors. It explains the nature of the errors, so it could be some linguistic factors involved, which are interlingual or intralingual interference. The fifth one is evaluating or correcting errors. Moving on to the second framework, we will use Albaum's 2016 framework. Um, this framework can be used as a tool to identify grammatical rules of future tense some students don't follow. So there are 4 types of future tense as described by Albaum. The first one is the future with will. Will is a modal auxiliary verb, so we can use will plus base form for the future tense. The second type is the future with be going to. A form of be plus going to plus base form can be used to express future time. The third one is to choose whether will or be going to or present continuous tense ing for future. And the fourth one is the future plus time or if clause. So some sentences have a time or if clause and a main clause. So we use the future in the main clause and the simple present in the time or if clause. That's all from me. I'll pass the floor to Shahira.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Nur Shahira binti Sahi, and right now I'm going to continue with the next framework, which is from Brown in 2000. So, Brown classifies factors of errors into 4 types, which are interlingual transfer, intralingual transfer, context of learning, and communication strategies. So in the interlingual transfer, which is the mostly occurs in the early phases of learning different languages. So this is because the learner's knowledge about the first language is still firmly set. Next will be the intralingual transfer. So it refers to the target language as the main factor of errors in learning other languages. It implies that the variables emerges from the target language. So third will be the context of learning. Brown explains that students often make errors because of a misleading explanation from the teacher, faulty presentation of a structure or words in a textbook, or even because of a pattern that was memorized in a drill but improperly contextualized. So it implies that the elements of the mistakes in setting of gaining could be started from the educators or from the materials itself. Last but not least is the communication strategies. He argues that it implies to the learning style. It implies that the educators should be certain that the procedures that involve fit the materials in order to transfer the materials effectively. Moving on to the significance of study. So this study is valuable for future research regarding error analysis of future tense among upper primary students in Malaysia. By identifying the errors that these students have committed, these studies will particularly be an essential studies for future studies. So most researchers are focusing on the secondary and tertiary educational level, which lead to the focus of the study on the primary level. By identifying the factor of future tense errors among upper primary students, fitting fitting actions can be taken in order to ensure further understanding of future tense can be achieved in future. So that's all for our presentation. Thank you for listening.